Hi, everyone. I'm Lana with GlowDollar. We're a stablecoin, US regulated, US issued stablecoin, except we donate 100% of our profits back into the ecosystem and to charitable causes. And I'm your moderator today. I will speak very little. We're here to listen to all of you. And so just to start, I'd kind of like to have you, maybe in a minute or so, give your name, what you do, and essentially like why are you on this panel? Like what makes you sell people and why they want to hear what you have to say today. And we'll just go down the line like this.
Awesome. Hey guys, I'm Ram. I'm one of the core contributors at OpenLedger. OpenLedger is an AI blockchain that enables people to contribute data and build AI models. These are specialized AI models. And then we use attribution to reward back to them. We've been in the space close to about a decade, me personally as well, and started as a blockchain R&D and machine learning company. OpenLedger was an incubation out of that. We've been backed by Polychain Capital, Portalus, and a couple of others. We've raised about $15 million. We're currently in testnet and pretty much going mainnet soon. Good to meet you guys here.
Yeah, I'm Nisita. I'm head of DevRel at Eliza Labs, which is part of, the team that supports Eliza OS. Most of you might also know us as AI16Z, rather. So it's just a name change, so it's the same team. So Eliza OS, if you're wondering, hey, what is that? I've never heard of it. We are probably the most popular open source AI agent framework that exists out there. And if you're wondering, why would I be part of this wonderful panel here? We see lots of use cases that people build, whether they're building it as part of a B2C capacity because they're just tinkering, or they're broader teams that are building it because they actually want to build businesses out of it or just drive value in like a B2B capacity. So we've seen a variety of those, and super excited to be here to meet everybody and kind of talk more to the panel here and kind of hear what the panel also has to share from their own perspectives as well. So thanks for having me.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jordan. I'm the co-founder of AITV. What we're building is an autonomous agentic media network where AI agents go live and they create content whenever people want them to. So there's actually these owners of these agents where you can spin up one for your brand, you can spin up one for your token, for your community, and you can have it do different entertaining things to build an audience. So the same way you would come to Twitch and you would watch an individual streamer that's doing interesting things that you are interested in, you can do that same thing on AITV with an AI that is running autonomously. We didn't start here. We've been building agents in Web3 since 2023. We're really strong believers that agents have a strong place to be able to bring Web3 into people's lives in a meaningful way. So how we're doing that with AITV is that whenever you prompt an agent, you're actually getting tokens in return. So it's a cool onboarding tool, not just to your individual project, but also to Web3 in general. And we see agents as a huge unlock for society and humanity and all that fun stuff. So excited to talk more with this great panel.
Hey everyone, Dan, one of the co-founders and CEO at Aethir. We're a distributed GPU network. And I think I'm here because we kind of see how, why, where, and what people are using compute for, specifically in the AI space. So we're kind of like upstream for adoption. We kind of get an early look at what's working, what has go-to-market potential, what's found product market fit, and usually we can see that because their costs go up. They need more compute. So yeah, excited to be here. Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you, everyone. And so I'm just going to ask questions. We don't have to particularly go in an order and you don't feel obligated to answer a question if you don't want to as well. So again, today's topic is like AI agents, decentralized autonomous agents. What makes an agent and a decentralized agent different than, say, like ChatGPT, our ChatGPT therapists, like we were talking about in an earlier session, or businesses have always traditionally used like chatbots. So what makes this like next level of AI agents or just AI in general different from models that people probably are already using?
Want me to start? Okay. So I think everyone has a perspective how decentralized AI agents should be. I've seen people work on like decentralized inference for agents, but what we focus on is more on attribution. So let me explain a bit more. So on OpenLedger, when people build AI models and data is contributed for those AI models, when every time this AI model throws out an inference, it could be a user interacting with these models or an agent. On that inference, we figure out which data is causing that particular inference, right? we show the impact, and then we attribute back to those data providers. There are two things that comes out of this. You can use that to reward the data contributors. You could also use that to explain these models better. Now you know why this model is actually throwing out an inference and what data is actually causing that. So let's assume an agent goes ahead and uses this model, and this model is trained on like Web3 data, and is going to use it for like DeFi trading and stuff. Like I think Giza spoke about this, right? While actually trading and actually making impact, if something goes wrong, you'll actually be able to go figure out what data actually caused that, right? Which particular data set was poisonous, which made this agent to perform a task maliciously, right? So having that transparency, that auditability between data contribution to an agent implementation is very important. I think decentralization plays a role there by making this entirely auditable and verifiable. And also, since the data is by nature decentralized and people contribute, so it's unbiased, right? Because it's naturally you get data to be very much from people across the globe. So this makes our product in a way to support agents to be much more broader, agents to be much more open, verifiable. I think that's one way we would define decentralized agents. Agents that have complete verifiability in terms of what really goes in and why it performs a particular action. And I think that is very important for any agent to be open and transparent.
Yeah, just to build off of that, I think that it's important first to kind of think about what is an agent, because the term gets thrown around a lot. And so to me, in kind of classical definitions, it's like being able to take an assortment of inputs, being able to use generative models to be able to process those, and then being able to have output actions that are resulting of that. And so you can use this type of software to do anything. And one of the beautiful things, as was just mentioned, is that with decentralization, with verifiable systems, we can be able to actually trace what the input data is and what the output actions are, and why the AI was doing that. And it becomes extremely important with agents because that little centerpiece, the cognitive piece that decides what actions are being taken, it's using a generative model. And so it has a ton of baked-in complexity where you cannot trace back exactly why decisions were made. It's completely different than a bot where it's like, classical AI. A lot of people simplify it saying classical AI is just a series of if-else statements. But with generative models, it changes that whole game where you're dealing with a ton of different weighted, vertices, and you don't know necessarily why something happened. So having decentralization, having the ability to federate your compute, to be able to have multiple actors, maybe using different models to do the cognitive work, to come up with the results, seeing what the best results are. Web3 is great for creating these multiplayer systems that can help create a better end result.
I guess it's going to sound like a broken record. Ours comes from the compute angle, but the way we see decentralized agents properly leveraging decentralized compute is actually more about service, like SLAs and response times. And we see this cross-section now happening more and more on some of our robotics AI clients. Like if you're talking to a robot and some AI agent's powering it, and you're like, hey, can you serve me this glass of water? Well, it's taking this input and translating it somewhere and then responding. But you have this weird uncanny valley if it has to send it to some data center halfway across the world, process it, and then send it back, right? So decentralized compute provides local edge node services so that somewhere locally in a 1 or 2 mile radius, it's being able to process that on the fly in real time and interact with you so that there's not this massive 50 to 100 millisecond lag every single time you give it an instruction and then it returns something. So what we see the power of decentralized agents really utilizing distributed edge compute resources to improve the overall experience of that interaction, so it becomes much more lifelike, human-like.
So I'm going to try not to repeat anything anyone said, because that's going to be really hard. So something other than that's already been said, I'd say just the ability to do transactions, that's not something that a traditional bot would have been able to do. It wouldn't have had access to a wallet. I know I'm oversimplifying it here. So I think that fundamentally enables a bunch of use cases and what the agent is able and capable of doing, as well as like the ability for swarms. Like that didn't exist when we're talking about bots. That is enabled in like AI agent capacity. So I think that just unlocks a whole wide world of possibilities that I'd say that is like a key differentiator in addition to all the wonderful things the folks have already shared.
Thank you for all those answers. So my TLDR on that is essentially you are able obviously to do a bunch of things on chain, execute transactions, but I think most importantly you're able to like look at data and see what went wrong, what went right, how did it get to this outcome, and that would be very helpful if we could do that in our own lives, and we can't, so at least we can do it in this case. And this kind of leads me into the next question. Again, when we are looking at like what went right, what went wrong, people are using these agents now to obviously do things from creating content to like building website, executing code, to what we saw earlier, actually going out and sourcing the best DeFi yields via stable coins that they can find while the people who use them sleep. So what in this zone of people being able to actually like leverage these models to do real like economic and social impact output situations, what are you particularly the most excited for? Doesn't have to be like in your work, could also just be as obviously someone who's very invested in this space. Like what is something you're excited about?
Yeah, for me personally, I swear this isn't just me shilling, but I'm really interested in having personified agents. I think that one of the big beauties of AI is that it makes software more personable. And that's hard to understand when, an AI system is just running in a very opaque environment. And so I think that the more and more we're able to actually personify these things, it's a beautiful thing because it helps people connect with software in different ways, helps people understand and, be able to engage and relate in different ways. And so for me, it's like I want to see AI help create software that is more personable. Yeah.
So just to add to that, personal opinion, just purely because selfishly speaking sort of as well, I'm not really good at socials. Like, I'm not good at keeping track of them. There's way too many out there. I just can't keep up with messages. I get messages from my family saying, where the hell are you? You haven't responded in weeks. So I'm sure most of us can resonate, right? Okay. So I'd love to, and I've yet to perfect this. I think it's already possible. I just haven't built it out to a level I'd like it. But an agent that basically is my clone for all intents and purposes, and who can keep track of all my socials and only surface the ones that I really need to look at. If there's small talk, I feel like my agent can help kind of navigate that. Or if there's, I know it sounds kind of, but if there's questions like, let's say my mom's like, oh, what's the number of this person? My agent can deal with that. Like, I don't need to look at my phone and send out contact information. So I feel like a lot of this I could kind of hand off. So I think I don't know, I'm just selfish in that context, but I think it would be significantly helpful, like getting more time back where we would like, I think it's helpful.
I think most of us is talking about like personalized agents. I think I would think the same, but more on use cases like DeFi is what people have been like really talking about and experimenting, but we've not really seen an actual agent which does that. I've heard some reports where people say is that if a DeFi agent actually trades in behalf of you, it's going to be at least like 30-40% much more in terms of efficiency than actual human would, right? But the infrastructure for that or the capability of these agents are not so there yet. We've seen this happen in the traditional space. We don't see that happening in crypto. I think it's all because everything is so spread across, none of the data is structured. If people can build capabilities, let's say through models or through data, to make these agents much better, and then we would see much more personalized trading agents for us, which is very good for the market itself. As humans, we tend to make errors. It's not going to take 100x leverage on a project which is not to be done, right? So I think that's important. If I could see better DeFi and like trading tools using agents, that's something that I'd love to see.
Yeah. So something not finance related. We're seeing a lot of really interesting use cases pop up in the health and human services sectors. So, and I think this was like the possibilities of this started becoming more applicable after like the kind of DeepSeek revelation, is that like small to medium-sized businesses can take a large language model and then fine tune it for their own purposes. So now you could be a hospital system here in the south of France and train on your own set of data, your own patients, to fine-tune some model to help reduce mortality rates or help increase or decrease like surgical complications and things like that. And we're starting to see a lot of like regional mid-size health companies pick up and start to explore, purchasing some compute and then training their own fine-tuned model on their own kind of bespoke data sets to better service their clients. And I think that's only going to start to scale in across all like kind of human services sectors, accounting, legal, et cetera. How it's being used and to what extent there's some sensitivities around personal data is still debatable, but it's a pretty exciting field. And I mean, if you can reduce mortality rates by like 5% because of reducing human errors, that's massive, right? And to be honest, it doesn't take that much compute to run. So I think it makes it just way more accessible to the masses.
Sorry.
I was just going to add, it's incredible to me that we're now at a place where you can customize software to that. Like, it's so easy to customize something as complex as that. You really just kind of isolate the data, feed it in, and now all of a sudden you have a completely new program that can, identify things it couldn't before. It's really wild to think about.
Yeah, so that's what we enable in OpenLedger, right? Just to add to what Dan told, we want to enable more and more people to build like personalized and customized models. And so, for example, there is a team which is building a model for solidity, right? Ethereum is one of the most largest used blockchains out there. Solidity obviously is the code language for that. Cursor, which is one of the largest code generation models out there, does not really understand Solidity very well. It doesn't have a deep learning of Solidity. And there is a team which is building a model specific for Solidity, which is going to enable more and more developers to just use natural language to generate code. So stuff like that is what we would want to encourage, and we have more people. So that's going to make more personalized agents, right? You need to build a brain first for the human to actually perform. So agents are like humans. So you need to have the right models and the data sets for these agents to be like really personalized and do things that will actually matter for daily lives.
If I could just quickly chime in again. The healthcare comment, that just reminds me of just the world of possibilities. Most recently, I've heard someone talk about like gut biome. I think most of us probably heard of it in some context. But when we get these reports, like we go do our test, whether it's a blood test, some variation of like a wellness test, we're not always able to read it in a way that makes sense. We actually have, that's where we have to go see a radiologist or the equivalent to say, okay, help me understand what this is. I've seen people build out agents as part of hackathons and stuff that are basically adding the additional context, the proprietary data to allow the agent to help the user read it in a user-friendly way. So then you can sit there, you're no longer capped by, you only have 5 minutes with your doctor. It's actually, you can talk to that agent for 60 minutes or whatever and ask the questions to, again, going back to the personalization, to even help curate what sort of diet you should be considering if your outcome is X to improve your gut biome. I'm just using that as an example. So I think the world of possibilities, back to what the panel is saying, is if someone has a context of working in a specific industry or whatever the niche might be, them learning how to build an agent using the existing tools and the value that drives is like incredible, I think. So back to, we're just going to see amazing things blow out.
Sorry, just one thing to add quickly is when I was in my computer science program in college, one of the things that the professor said that stuck in my head forever is like, he told us that learning how to code is not going to be what drives your career. All of the additional context and knowledge you bring into software development is what's going to drive your career. So if you had a career previously as working in healthcare or being a healthcare professional, learning how to code allows you to create solutions that, actually express all of that additional knowledge. And now with generative models, anybody's able to do that. They don't need to know how to code. They just bring in their context, they bring in their domain-specific knowledge, and you have something incredible. Yeah.
Thank you. I loved all these answers. Again, I think that to summarize what you guys were all saying is essentially like humans, we have a certain capacity, whether it be as like individuals or professionals in certain fields. And what these agents are able to do is actually not just fill in the gaps, but expand whatever our human kind of capacity is, either as me creating an agent of myself And again, even with trading, I have emotion, I FOMO into things, and that's usually where I get screwed. It's where I get wrecked. So then you have this safeguard of, again, that's my limitation. I have this. Doctors, other types of professions, again, maybe wanting to code, maybe don't have the time to do that, but have all this really great context that I can kind of bring in. So really, it's like endless possibilities based on our own personal imagination and how we might want to build or program or use these agents and models, which is really cool. And then this kind of perfectly segues into the next question, which is, obviously there's a promise, and we're also seeing it. I see on Twitter every day like solo founders who are raising like tens of millions of dollars, and they're leveraging AI to help build out their companies or their businesses, and or it might be a solo founder, it might be a small team. So have you seen any like real world example of people, a small team or a solo founder, leveraging this technology to help scale? Or maybe you're seeing something like in action, and just also to plant ideas for people, because raising money and building out a team is very, very expensive, and that often prevents people from doing what it is that they want to do, and this kind of creates this really cool opportunity for people.
Yeah, I can go first. I think one of the key points with scaling teams or scaling an organization is usually you need more resources, i.e. people, to help you deliver more things. So scalability always was more of a linear thing sometimes, but with technology, specifically AI agents, I think scalability is just addressed in a slightly different way. So I'll go back to the social media thing just because it's a pain for me personally. So if I'm thinking about marketing or something of that effect, even just as recent as yesterday, that you guys did a hackathon, and one of the teams, they built out a social media agent, or like, I forget what she called it, but it's basically all of your marketing more scalable. So having your agent be present in multiple of your social accounts, consistent persona and character, consistent voice. How many of us actually, let me just pause for a second. How many of you guys, including myself, I'll put my hand up first, when we're trying to create content, like let's say copy, how many reviews, more than one review, because we could not get our voice correctly, just because it takes a while, because there's probably one person on the team who sets the voice, who understands it, but the rest of us sometimes, we're just like, okay, it's almost there, maybe not. So just using that as one example, it takes multiple iterations. And if I think about number of hours spent or things like that in a traditional context, that would take some amount of time. So that does impact scalability. But when I have an agent that's preset to that voice and that tone from a brand standpoint, I just now have to create my content, give it to my agent to frame it in a way that's consistent with my voice and tone. Geez, I never have to look at it. I'd be very happy personally. That's just one example. Sorry, Alice.
No, keep going.
Yeah, and I just want to chime in here. Obviously, I love the idea of content agents, but I think that Twitter is getting fed up with content agents. They're like, it's just too much spam. I don't know. It's all yapping. And so at AITV, we're really passionate about audio-visual content. We think that that's a huge domain where AI has the chance to be able to do something great that doesn't pester people on their feeds. And so just like you were saying, being able to define the brand voice and being able to be there to create, messaging content related to, the things you want to communicate to the masses, that's one of the hardest things. And that's what marketing departments have spent ages trying to perfect and spend, a huge amount of money to be able to do. And so with AI, it allows us to craft that and hone that in better, do it at lower costs so that you're able to scale the team faster, and also scale your kind of like market penetration faster. And then additionally, being able to do so when you don't have to be the one doing the work necessarily, right? If you're sitting there prompting all the time, it's like, okay, you're still spending your hours addressing this thing. At AITV, we're really passionate about the idea of having these autonomous agents where you can spin one up for your brand, you can have it go live every week or every day for a couple hours, and you can just let your community know, hey, come and talk to our agent, and you can ask it questions about whatever we're doing. Maybe it's doing live product demos. Maybe we're selling like a API for insights. You can go to the agent, you can talk with it, you can ask it questions. It can live query the API and give you the results. So it's like a fun product demo. It's sharing information about your brand, maybe sharing updates. Or, you could have it do just fun things to meme on the internet. Like if you've seen like all of the different brand accounts on Twitter really emphasizing like the intern meta, that's also fun too. So creating really wild, clippable moments. So branding, marketing, scaling through AI, I think that's a really huge opportunity because it takes a ton of time and work.
So I've not seen really like solopreneurs or like people who are like building companies on their own. Like maybe I've not met them, but what I've also observed is that people have become much more efficient. As in, the companies have become efficient, right? They don't hire like how they used to, because they just have managers who use AI tools to get better outputs, right? I think that's pretty great. Even though that's not great for employment, but as an efficiency of how people use AI, we've seen this happen a lot. Personally, as myself, I use a lot of AI tools instead of actually assigning it to my own team and getting some outputs out, right? I think efficiency has become much better. So kudos to that, and I think we will start to see more of entrepreneurs just being themselves and then building AI companies as well.
I guess I'll weigh in again, kind of from the infrastructure perspective. I don't mean this to be kind of a Debbie Downer type of moment, but I think Gartner just released some report saying like 40-50% of AI and AI agent projects will be dead within the next 12 months or a year. We like to think actually it's even higher because we see one of the biggest issues, which is a little bit of an inside joke, is it's not your go-to-market or your product market fit that kills you, it's your AWS costs, right? And if you pay AWS bills, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. One of the things that we're able to do is help projects de-risk that go-to-market by helping underwrite infrastructure costs in the beginning to utilize AI services or AI tool sets to become more efficient without having to bear all the massive upfront costs that kind of snap at you after the first 2 months and that first 50K credits are over. We think scaling through AI is still something that the market is still trying to figure out. So we do the best we can to support by helping de-risk for projects in that go-to-market process.
And I would agree to that, because when we initially were experimenting with models, we used to use AWS, and like just for using one single GPU, it used to cost us about $8 per hour. And we were looking at decentralized compute options, and that's how I found Aethir. And then we used them, and it's costing us maybe like $1 per hour. So think of the cost difference, right? So I would definitely agree and watch for that.
Yeah, we really want to talk with you. We're currently using Google Cloud, and we're paying some bills, and yeah, it would be great to talk.
So the idea is there's lots of potential, but make sure you double check your accounting and how much it's actually going to run or cost you to run all of that compute power, because you don't want to shut your doors. Okay, I like this. And so we've been talking a lot of obviously about the positive components of especially the decentralized autonomous agents. Obviously, agents are bots that exist within a model that is controlled. There's a lot more ability if something goes rogue or goes wrong to kind of shut it down, as AITV was saying earlier in their earlier session. How do we work with or prevent, or what happens when an agent maybe goes rogue? Is there like soul-bound tokens, reputation systems, and maybe they already exist, or maybe we should kind of be looking into it? Because again, as years and years go on and your agent's been alive forever, and then all of a sudden it starts messaging nasty things to your mom, because she's asking you too many questions. How do you kind of prevent that or do that, especially when it is more of that decentralized out there agent?
Yeah, so I say this every time this question comes up, is that I think that oftentimes when the word agent gets thrown around, people start to assume that it can do anything. But the reality is that it's just software like the rest of it, and so you can build it to do very specific things. And so you've probably seen the headlines where it's like, oh, this agent just gave away 500 ETH or something like that. And it's like, you could have programmed it to not do that. And so it's like, I think that the bottom line is it starts with just building software, using good constraints and not trying to make something that does everything. Being constrained in your use case is probably the first great step to start with when it comes to having the desired result. Because users of software, and especially AI software, they want consistent results. And as soon as they see something that breaks that consistency and gives them an improper result, they lose their faith, and they don't necessarily want to interact with it anymore. So consistent use case specific results, I think, is the first place to start.
Yeah, I think like humans, one thing that I want to add, how we would, I think agents have to be humanized. Like how humans, we have guardrails for people that we employ and work with. very similarly, as he told, agents could also have like guardrails, right? One important thing that we need to be sure is to be very precautious and understand how these agents work. That's why decentralized systems really help, so that you can have things auditable and verifiable. And I've seen this happen over very important use cases, majorly like healthcare and trading and stuff like that. Because let's say I'm going to go to a doctor and before actually consulting him, I'm going to use an agent to figure out like what symptoms I have. I don't want to be in a position where it actually guides me wrong, right? So having that auditability is important first, and also having like a kill switch that can really stop agents to go rogue is important. And I think as humans, we work on like legal contracts. Humans and agents should work on like digital contracts. That's where smart contracts come in. And if you can actually implement smart contracts really well and program it better, there could be all these kind of risks that could be avoided as well.
Yeah, I'd actually double down on both of these top comments, because I do agree that kind of taking the approach similar to like regular employment. Like imagine hiring a new intern. Imagine hiring a new intern. Like you're not going to give that intern your keys to everything. Like maybe somebody might. I wouldn't personally. Probably not advisable. So similarly, I'd say having boundaries and having very specific scope. Hallucination is just part of it, at least at this stage. So I think we have to accept that there is that possibility and be mindful, because it's not set and forget. It's you are going to maintain and monitor. I think that's where the verifiability really comes in, is you want to make sure along the path that it's still consistent with your expected outcomes and it's not deviating too much. And if so, you're constantly calibrating accordingly. But the key there is, in my opinion anyways, stick to the scope initially until you get familiar enough with the predictability of and the reliability of the responses. And I think continue to tighten it as necessary.
Not much to add from my side. I guess short of turning off the power grid, we are usually the kill switch. You just shut off the server rack, right? But yes, like we do, for example, work with a lot of our partners to create virtualized environments so that if something goes wrong in a specific environment, they're able to completely delete that Dockerized environment or whatever for safety reasons or security reasons or privacy reasons if there's data leakage. But yeah, that's basic security protocols that we have in place for most of our clients.
Yeah, and I think the other thing I want to add is that I think that the same sort of like logical mishap happens with AI as does with decentralization when building new products, is that let's say you're building a new trading agent. The misstep in the logical thinking is that like, oh, I need to make this run autonomously all the time. And so I need to make it good enough so that users can trust it. It's just going to run in the background. It's going to trade their money. In reality, the best product vision, in my opinion, for that use case is maybe I have a daily notification on my phone. It's my trading agent. It's giving me my daily insights and saying, hey, here's the proposed trades. Do you want to approve these? Click, click, click. It's all done for me. That seems like a much better UX than worrying constantly about what is my autonomous trading agent doing with my money. And the same thing happens with decentralization. It's like people are trying to build great products, great things that are changing the world in the Web3 space, but they have the logical fallacy of saying like, oh, we need to make it completely decentralized from the start. Why? What needs to truly be verifiable? What needs to truly be trustless? Not everything. There's some things that truly just don't matter. And so it's like trying to actually think critically about what your UX looks like and what to actually let the AI do autonomously versus having the user approve as it's trying to make good decisions.
Actually doubling down on the human in the loop piece, I would say don't be afraid of that. I think especially when you're starting out, until you get to your confidence level gets to a place where you feel it is doing exactly, within the scope of what the range of acceptability, whatever that is for you. And it is going to be very use case dependent. So don't assume I just want to double down, because I think it's very easy for us to say it can be completely autonomous from, day zero. I don't think it has to. Unless you have a very specific use case, that might be, again, use case specific, but it's okay to start out with human in the loop until you get to a stage where you feel more comfortable to kind of give it a bit more room to grow.
What I'm gathering then is just like a DAO shouldn't be decentralized on day one. It'll most likely implode. So don't go that route with your AI agent. But also the idea is actually treat your agent as you would anyone you're hiring on your team. Give them a very specific scope, test it out, play with it, give them more responsibility as time goes on. And then because it is decentralized, if it ever does make mistakes or does something really great that you're like, wow, how'd you do that? You can actually look at the data and replicate it or say never do that again. So again, a lot of it is just how we would interact with people to start and then kind of scale from there. My next question is, again, there's endless possibilities in terms of what we're really able to do with not just AI, but agents and all of these components, even the decentralized components of, being able to work cross-border, cross-industry, and build on and with people in other industries in ways we have not been able to do with the traditional siloed technology and software we have today. What industry, again, could be blockchain oriented, again, could be healthcare, any industry. What industry do you think is going to have the biggest impact with this, or just the industry you're the most excited about in terms of the possibilities? And again, thinking 5-10 years after we've run through a lot of the problems and scaled the technology so it's a lot better and easier for people to use.
Specifically with connectivity of different things?
Just and however you want to answer.
I think he would say media.
I swear I wasn't. I swear.
I think every industry. It's like electricity and internet. Every industry was impacted by that. And AI pretty much will be the same as well. It would start with more internet-first companies and digital firms and then expand on to more brick and mortar. But I think every other industry will have a change with it. And I think it's for the good. A lot of people talk about how AI is going to come in and we're going to lose jobs. It happened with PC era and internet era. We lost jobs, but more jobs were created. Very similarly, I think initially there would be an impact, but more jobs, better efficiency, and better growth in terms of human connectivity will increase. And so yeah, every other industry will get impacted, I believe.
And so I agree. And I think that the same way that it's going to increase kind of net productive output for humanity, one of the other things that it is doing really well is it's allowing things to be more interchangeable and composable. And so no longer do you necessarily have to bake in a specific API solution to your software and then, you're stuck with that provider forever. The ideal hope, and this is a part of kind of the initial kind of Web3 manifesto that a lot of us believe in, is being able to have composable solutions, being able to be portable with your data so that you can switch providers for different things. And I think that AI helps make that much, much simpler. That switching cost is a lot lower. If you look at solutions let's say the MCP protocol, it's the ability to easily kind of effectively just wrap an API, plug it into an agent, and then let the LLM figure out how to use it based on the context it's given. So I think that composability is going to increase. Ideally, with the Web3 future, the ability to actually have your data more sovereign and portable, and being able to take your business or your personal life elsewhere to different providers becomes easier, and net productive output becomes greater as a society because we're just able to do more. And hopefully, we don't all just dip into poverty with no wealth or income because the AI took it all. So I don't think that's going to happen, but yeah.
But also media, right?
But also media.
I'll go back to, we fundamentally believe it's health human services, really things that previously had huge barriers of entry because of subject matter expertise, right? Back in the day, even before widespread adoption of internet, there were jobs where you were just the SME of some company and you were the most highly paid person because you were the knowledge source. You were all of knowledge was tribal, and you were the only person that knew how to do X, Y, or Z, or had that collection of knowledge. That kind of went away with the internet age, and I think what we'll start seeing now is a lot of these data processing, knowledge, expertise, kind of contingent roles will start to disappear, and it'll be somewhat replaced by those that know how to utilize data. Those basically, instead of wielding the tools, those that know how to make tools or utilize tools in a better manner. And I do think there'll be some pretty massive disruptions in specific fields where very quickly, actually because of a positive feedback loop, it'll improve the quality of output of that specific field, say doctors or legal or accountants or all these things where beforehand you would spend, like during tax season, hundreds of hours poring over one client, where now if things are on chain and everything can be managed by a specifically fine-tuned LLM, it can be done in a few minutes, right? But then you need someone who knows how to be creative on how to fine-tune that model, how to utilize the output of that to service the client's interests, best interest, right? And so the scope of the job changes, even if like the kind of minutia of the work is abstracted away.
Yeah, I could definitely see a future where we have a specific role at organizations like small and large that is like an AI expert, you know, like how to best leverage AI to help the organization function. You know, it's similar to like, I don't know, maybe like a COO or something, like somebody who focuses specifically on business operations. Having someone focused on leveraging AI for that purpose, I think makes a lot of sense.
And to double down on like what Dan told, right? I think that's what we are betting on as well. There will be a separate gig economy created for like data contributors. When initially internet came about and social media came about, not everyone started contributing content to social media, right? People who are experts actually started doing that. And then what we kind of understood is that there was a lot of access to content creation. People had understood that you can actually make a living out of that. And we had more and more content creators that really came about, right? After YouTube started monetizing it, content creation and stuff like that. Very similarly, for data, I believe there's a huge need for data. That's one of the reasons like Meta has invested like $14 billion into Scale, because there is a need for like proprietary data sets. And so there would be a gig economy that will be starting for data contribution. It will initially start with more on machine learning engineers and people who have been working on data side, and then evolve on to more traditional users coming forward and contributing the data and like providing actual useful information that could make models better and better for like use cases which are very niche and day-to-day lifestyles. Yeah, I think that's one thing that we are betting on.
We're obviously in a room of people who are really open to exploring and trying new technology. So what I'm gathering from the panel is it's essentially because it's going to hit every industry just like the internet has. It's really about just taking some time to tinker with, play around with it, see how it could maybe work for you, and maybe it doesn't, but just understanding how it works could be very beneficial in the future because jobs and industries might be so impacted by it that at least you have had a couple of years of playing around before it gets really, really big. It's obviously a lot bigger, I think, in the blockchain space as well. And so last question for this panel, and thank you all of you so much for your insights. I was selfishly very excited to moderate this because this was the topic that I personally wanted to learn about, so I got to ask the questions I wanted. But just wanted to kind of like, in wrapping it up, just a closing thought or maybe a call to action that you'd like to share with people.
I think like very similar to what you told, like everyone should learn about AI. It's going to impact our lives, whether someone who's not in tech or not. We all need to learn. I wish that we all learn how to code. That'll really impact us. Now we don't really have to worry about that because AI is going to do for you. But if you can actually see how AI can be used in each of our profession, it's going to really impact our lives. And once we are aware of what's going to happen, then you're not really impacted. You're actually going to embrace it and do much better. So I believe learning about AI is very important.
I'm just going to repeat the same thing, just slightly using different words. Think of AI as a tool. Like whatever your preferred context is, whether it's an industry, whether it's a function, the value you're going to be able to bring is at the intersection of those two things, the tool being AI and whatever context or industry you're focused on. Because the way you choose to use that and apply to drive value to that industry is what's going to, I think, make the difference.
Yeah, and I guess I would just say I would encourage people to get creative. I think that when it comes to the AI revolution, like in the online revolution, it was hard for people to imagine what websites could be used for. And so I think that the same thing exists with AI. It's hard to imagine what I could use it for as a business, as a person. But when you start to get creative and you start to think about, what if I actually started asking, the AI about some of my personal problems, or maybe some qualms that I don't quite know how to, deal with. Or, as a business, maybe I want to try and, think about new markets that I could branch into, or think about how to build community. Being able to be creative about how to leverage AI for all these different things, because the possibilities are truly endless and they can be pretty cool.
I guess I'll just end it with, I assume a lot of builders and investors are here. Don't be afraid to fail, right? Like the only way we're going to get to really strong adoption of some niche AI use case is by failing 1,000 times to find that perfect iteration that really resonates with some core audience. And it doesn't take a lot for you to get scale and all of a sudden resonate with other core audiences as well, right? Most really huge conglomerates today started out as a very niche product that then expanded their scope over time. Don't be afraid to focus on a very small problem space. Fail often, fail fast. Come to us for compute for it. We'll help fund your go-to-market, and when you do find the one thing that resonates with some core adopter group set, let's work together to scale it up, bring it to market.
Yeah, I think I spoke.
Okay.
Yeah,
I thought you were like, I have another comment.
Maybe use OpenLedger for building the models.
Yes.
And use them for compute, yeah.
I like this. It's a plant. He's a plant. Well, thank you so much for your time, your insight, your knowledge, obviously your SMEs in this industry. And we don't have any space for questions, but if you do have questions, obviously maybe you guys will be lingering around or take a photo of their name and reach out to them online. But thank you so much. I had a great time.
Thank you.